Alrighty, welcome back to the stream. Okay, today we're doing the part 2, porting the asset into DayZ, or at least preparing it. So the last time we left off basically where we finished doing the general geometry for our building. So here is our building, here is the geometry. So this is our basically kind of finished rough building geometry. Okay. Now what I done behind the scenes is I went and defined assets such as box piles, basically the main interior objects into their own separate models. Now, the reason for that, you can basically do the same without separating them into objects, but defining them as vertex groups inside the model. The reason for doing this is when you're importing these assets into Object Builder, you will be able to easily select these objects and define them as proxies inside the Object Builder, instead of going and selecting basically everything manually by vertices. Pay in mind that it's better to be done in Blender, because the Blender toolkit has a bit more advanced toolkit that allows you to grab and define objects with a lot more ease than the Object Builder. As the main issue with the ported assets is that they come fractured, so to speak. So mostly these vertices, these objects are not really connected. Many of them. We'll look, for example, at the crates. Let's isolate those. We'll look primarily at the crates. You can see that the geometry is not connected. Yeah. So defining these in the Object Builder is gonna be a nightmare. Like, you can take apart and you can see that geo is not connected at all properly. So that's why it's better to define it here in Blender than going and doing this in the Object Builder. Okay. So now we have all the main interior parts, such as the ladder. Select this, select the boxes inside. Everything has been defined. So what do we do now? So one option, we can extract everything via the Arma toolkit export option, which is the Arma 3D. There is a caveat to this plugin. You have to make sure that you have no n-gons in your model, be it in the beauty load or in the geometry load. So what an n-gon means, it basically means a shape, yeah, shape that has more than 4 vertices connecting it. So in general purposes, I will just demonstrate what I mean. If we have this plane, yeah, you can see that the plane has 4 vertices. But if your shape has suddenly additional vertex like this, basically a rogue vertex, yeah, creating an n-gon, this will cause you issues. So the plugin will not export. You will get a warning below that you have n-gons, and the plugin cannot deal with that. You can get away, I believe, with that if you export as FBX, but if you're trying to export through the Arma plugin, this won't work. Most of your the geometry load that you're going to be making is going to consist of simple cubes Yeah, so you shouldn't really have an issue there unless you try to extrude something and by mistake create it like double vertices. The good part is, well, this might be a hindrance, yeah, in exporting with the Arma tool. It does tell you in which file you have the n-gons. So it will create a temporary file so you could review it and find the n-gons and get rid of them. Okay, so the way I port this is obviously I have two loads ready pretty much. So I'm going to export this, all of this. I'm gonna attempt to export this as a P3D. So let's see if it will be successful. Let's go to our P directory. Okay, gonna name this building 1. Okay, let's take a look. What did we get? Quite a different thing from what we wanted. Possibly? Nope. Okay, so it actually exported the whole file, so it's no biggie. That is fine as well. So what happens now is we have basically, like I said, we're gonna have our basically beauty load and we're gonna have our geometry load in here. Now, for the geometry to be registered, we also need to define the components inside the geometry load. So we click on structure and then go to topology, and then find components. And it's gonna define all the components for us. All right. So our geometry is defined. This is great. We can save this file. Now, in terms of beauty load, the Arma add-on has a caveat to it, and it does not really export the texture paths from what I've seen. So what I mean is this. You can see the texture paths are empty. Now you can understand there is a problem with trying to now finding each texture basically for each piece of geometry over here. And as because it's fragmented, it's gonna take you ages because the geometry is fragmented, like I showed case at the beginning of the stream. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to select all of this and delete. Now we're gonna go back to our Blender file. We're gonna select our model. We're gonna go to export. We're gonna export this as FBX. Again, we'll navigate to our mod folder, building 1. Gonna name it building 1. The same naming convention. We're gonna set the path mode to copy. Selected, we're gonna click select objects and we're gonna hit export. Now we're going back to our P3D. We're going to file, import, FBX. Okay, it's important that you will pick the master scale. The master scale should be 0.01. Otherwise, the model is gonna be huge. And there we go. We got our model. So if you take a look now, the geometry has texture applied to it. But as you can see, there is a second problem, and that is that it's basically pointing towards a specific path. Now the path it's pointing to is here, basically. When we issue the copy, when we export the FBX, and we selected the pathing from auto to copy, what it did is actually copy the textures into the directory of the FBX model. So you can see here all of the textures that are needed for this model present here. Yep, and it basically presented an input of the path towards those textures. Now this is not really gonna work for us because we need to change the path over here. Okay. Now before we're gonna do that, we're gonna fix this P3D file, because when we imported, we actually kind of created, we overwritten the geoload. So it disappeared, so it's no longer here. So we can go back to our Blender. We can hide this, open up the geoload. Once more. Let's call it geo. Open up this one. I'm gonna take the geo from here, and we're going to create a new load here, turn it into geometry, and paste it. Now, as you can see, you should not worry about the direction of the building. Everything stays in the same place. All right, and like we did before, we go to structure, we go to topology, find components, and we can save this. Great. All right. Okay. So how do we change the directory, basically, of all these faces or all those textures that we have? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to save the file, we're going to close it, and then we're going to open a neat software called Notepad++. Okay, I'm going to click Control F, and we're going to go to the tab Find in Files. Now what we're going to do is we're going to define this folder over here, since this is what we're looking for. So building _1.fbm. We're gonna put in the path that we want the replacement to be. So in this case, basically, I'm having two folders, one for the model, the other one for the texture archive. So I've input the folder directory here. So technically, we just need to copy the directory into this field. Don't forget the slash at the end. Okay. Now in filters, we put in star.star, and where to look for it, we click on the directory. And we go to P drive, go to the location where the model is located. So this is the folder where the our P3D file is sitting. Okay, click select. Okay, we also click match case. We won't get any mistakes as well. Okay, provided that we filled everything correctly. Once we click on replace in files, it's gonna rummage through the files in that directory. And anything it finds, all the paths it's gonna find that contain this building _1, it's gonna replace it with a new directory. So let's see how well are we gonna do. As you can see, it made over 28,000 adjustments. All right. So let's go back. If we open the P3D once again, we go into the select tool, click on any face, we can see that the directory for the texture was changed. Now the second issue that we have is this little thing. It's currently reading for the .dds format for a texture. So basically it's looking for the original Stalker texture. Now, there's a few things we need to do here to resolve this. Before we perform the same hat trick that we did now, we need to convert these images into PNGs and then to PAs. So what we can do is we can access additional software that I've linked in the description below. So this is basically DDS converter. We're going to give it an output folder. So the output folder is going to be our texture archive for this modification. So select building textures. Now, if I recall, the converter of Arma having an issue with JPEG. So we'll try to convert first with the PNG format. So we're gonna click add. We're going to go where our file is located. It's building 1, PM. Gonna select all and hit open. You can see all of the textures are selected, and we hit convert. Now this software does have a limitation of around, I believe, maybe 100, maybe 200 textures per batch, so you really have to manage these. Otherwise, it's gonna kind of like give an error at some point, and you will not really know at which texture it stopped. Okay, so our image conversion is completed. This one. Now we can open the Arma tool. We can do image to PAA. Gonna select the directory of our P drive. Go to our texture archive. You can see it found all the textures, the PNG textures. Okay, and hopefully we'll convert it with no issues. It's gonna take a while, so I suggest at this point we can go and grab ourselves a cup of coffee. So we're gonna be back in a minute or two. Okay, we're back with our coffee, and it seems like the process has been finished. All right. So we can close this application as well. So we can look through the directory. We go to our texture archive. We have now the PA images. So technically, we don't need the PNGs anymore. So we can go to .png and delete all. Okay, so our archive is clean. Okay. Now we're gonna do the same party trick that we did before, but this time, in order to adjust the format of the file that we're looking for DDS file format, we're going to replace it with .pa. So let's see. Oh, nope. Correct. It's .pa. Okay, so made our adjustments. Let's have a look. As you can see, now this building looks for the PAI images instead of the DDS images. So pathing convention is good. Great. Now the next issue that we might encounter is the following. Now this model is over 20,000 points and 28,000 faces. Now if we're gonna try to load this thing into Bulldozer, we might encounter a bit of an issue. You're gonna see it now. And as you can see, nothing loaded. This is because, unfortunately for us, Bulldozer has limitations. So it cannot render such a high poly model. We can close this. So what can we do? So as you can see, I've talked about defining the interior or the main interior parts of the building. Okay, so by defining these, we can set them as a proxy. We're gonna move all the selections to proxy. It's gonna ask us yes, 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 yes. I'm gonna click. Okay, as you can see, all of the other stuff just became proxies. And now, if we attempt to load the building, the building actually loads, and the building is textured. Okay, so we can see the whole building, everything looks neatly textured, everything is following its convention. It has the interior, which is that we defined. Okay. Now, regarding the proxies themselves, where are they placed? The proxies are placed whenever you define proxies and send stuff to proxies. It's going to create a separate folder in the directory of your P3D file. It's going to be under data, and all the proxies are going to be defined here. So I'm going to see basically everything is sitting here. Now, in order for the proxies work correctly and have collision, you will need to make a basic geometry for these objects. Now, the location in the viewport, for convenience sake, you can bring the model to the center of the screen, so it's going to be easier for you to work. Alright, just make sure that's from the side, on the front. Looks fine. And you can save the file. Now, the placement, as far as I'm aware, of this P3D model, from my experience, didn't matter. I just placed it in the center for my convenience. And from here, you shouldn't have a lot of texture work to do, because the texture should be already defined. We already done that, so from the beauty load, you're already sorted. But you will need to, if you want kind of like quality control, you will need to create the geo for this object. Now you can proceed with the object builder and create simple box geometry without exiting. Or if you prefer to work with everything through Blender, you can import a P3D file basically and work with it through Blender. Now from here, the creation of basically the rest of the loads can take place. In terms of fire geometry loads, these can be prepared in advance in Blender. So you can basically create another directory besides geometry, yep, and then basically create your fire geometry and so on and so forth for what you need. So I believe this will conclude the main gist of things on how to prep the model and sort a few difficulties on the way of getting actual 3D model ready. All right. Well, I'll see you in the next tutorial.